everybody, it's Laura, part of Crazy Dave's crew, and this is Thursday Threads. And this week I want to kind of walk everybody through something that I learned from one of the groups. In case you can't tell, I'm having a lot of fun. But they're calling it Who Let the Dogs Out? And I just think these are adorable. So these are the two that I've made so far. And now we're going to walk through the process and look to see how we make these. And then so let's get started, shall we? Alright, so we're going to start with the Magic 8. Okay, like we showed you in another video. Following the directions that the group emailed to me, they need to be 12.5 inches wide when we're finished. It's a 9-patch. So each of my squares needs to be 4.5 inches before I sew them together. So if we're doing the Magic 8, 4.5 times 2 is 9, plus 1.5 is 10.5. So I want a 10.5 inch square. I've got 2 fabrics, and I've gone ahead and drawn my line from corner to corner, and I've done my 2 seams 1/4 inch away from the lines. So we're just going to go ahead and start cutting these. So I want to find my halfway point. X marks the spot. And I'm going to cut this one in half. Now the dog block only needs 7 half-square triangles, so we are going to have 1 extra. But that can always go into your orphan bin. And if you don't have an orphan bin, well, you know, start one. I always tend to make a couple extra, just in case I've made a mistake. And we're going to cut this one in half. And then along the line, and on the line. So we're going to go press these. You're also going to need a 4.5 inch square of each of the fabrics that you've chosen. So go ahead and lay those down. Let's go press these down. So you're going to set your seam, and then you're going to open it. Okay, and then we're going to square them up. After you've set your seam and pressed it open, you really need to square up your squares. And if you've watched any of my other videos, I sound like a broken record. I have found that to be the key. And these rulers have the lines for the diagonal. And I need to be 4.5 inches. And then that line needs to be on that diagonal seam. And now you have a 4.5 inch square. So we just need to do those to the rest of them. No, this is not the fun part of it. But when you're sewing and all the pieces come together beautifully, that is fun. finish these up and then we'll start laying them out. Alright, so now that you've got all those squared up, you've got your 4.5-inch square of the solids, and then you've got your half square triangles. Now the hardest decision is which one's going to be the dog and which one's the background. I think I'm going to go with the light being the dog. So I'm going to pull out my little email that I received from the administrator of this swap, and I'm going to follow the directions. There's the first one. No. Dark background. And then that one. And that one. That one's going to go there. And then background. And, yep, that's right. Then there. And then there. That's not right. There. Better. And there. And then kind of double check your layout with the instructions that you've gotten. And that can be instructions from a group, it can be from a book, it can be from wherever. And then it's just a matter of putting it together. Just a standard 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Standard 9 patch. So we're going to sew these together. And I will probably change my pressing down so that I can nest these. But we'll sew down 3 strips and then put the 3 strips together. Let's go to the machine. Alright, as always, I am using my 1/4 inch PC foot. Again, if you don't have one, you don't have to have one. You can always put a piece of tape or something, or use some kind of magnetic guides. Those always work. I've moved my needle position to the center, and then we're just going to sew. So here we go. And this is called chain stitching. So if you're ever, quilters and sewists have a language all their own. When you are just going straight through stitching, doom, 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 one after another, it's what they refer to as chain stitching. So I'm doing two squares from my top row, 2 squares from my second row, and 2 squares from my third row. Just all at once. Happens to the best of us, or sometimes the beginners, the intermediate beginners, everybody. And if you're new to sewing, you see one of these things right here? Watch this. It's a little thread cutter. So let's open these up and pin down the rest of them. All right. And we're just going to sew these down. let's go press these down, and I will be right back. The way we press this is kind of important, and I kind of want to take a minute to show that to you. So I've got my 3 rows together. I've pressed these, the bottom row, that way. I've pressed the middle row to go that way, so that when I put them together, I have a nice nested seam. So I can just nest that in there. Alright, and I do want to show you this. Okay? So I've got my 2 pieces, and I'm just going to kind of nest that in there. And the reason that is so important is so that when you sew it down, your fabric lines up. So let's pin that. So when we press it, we'll make sure that's pressed that way so it's nice and flat. And then this one, again, here the seams line up. Right, so we're just going to kind of finger press this way, and before we sew it down, we'll press this. We want this to match up with that. And if you match up those seams, you should be good to go. So let's go and press down these seams so that they lie down flat. And we'll sew everything together. And then we're going to sew these down. I like to lift that up if it looks like things are going to buckle or bunch. So far, so good. Let's go do the last one. And the last one. And you may not be able to see it, but my pin does not actually go underneath the needle. Especially when my seams have to match up. I like to have it close, but I like to leave it in there so my fabric doesn't slip. So let's press this down and we'll take a look at the final result. So we are pressed down. All that's left now is to square it up to be 12.5 inches. And this is good to go. Then, when you do your quilt, you can do eyes, a nose, a tongue sticking out. There's any way, lots of things that you can do to personalize these blocks and make this quilt your own. I want to point out, again, be very careful here in the corners. And it's okay if you're a little off, you know, especially if you're learning. I think the points are real difficult, and it takes practice. And you have to be okay with them being a smidge off and just say, okay, well, I'll do better next time. But there is the dog patch ready for this month's swap. And I learned a new patch this month. How awesome is that? I hope you're having a great day. I hope that this video was helpful to you. I hope that you find as much enjoyment in the groups as I have been. Even if you never participate in the swaps, join the groups, learn, ask questions, look and see what they're doing. You can learn a lot. I'm learning something every single week. Sometimes more than once a week. Sometimes it's a couple times every day. So, on behalf of Crazy Days crew, I hope this has been helpful. Hope you have a wonderful day, and don't forget to come back. And thank you for watching this week's Thursday Threads.